Welcome to Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. My name is Mompoloki Lerumo Mogobe. Our objective is to enthuse, inspire, energize, and empower entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs of all stripes here in BW and beyond. We do so by inviting these entrepreneurs into our makeshift studio. Sometimes we call them to the restaurant, sometimes we go to our studio, and we ask them to share their experiential knowledge, their experiences and their expertise. And we ask them as many questions as we can, aimed at empowering you also as a viewer. Hello dear viewer, dear listener, my name is Mompoloki Lerumo Mogobe. Welcome to yet another exciting episode of Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom. As always, I bring exciting entrepreneurs, coaches, people in the entrepreneurship space to come and share life-changing education. I have a great guest. I have Nicolette Chinomona, who will have an opportunity to introduce herself in greater detail. We're going to talk about keys to entrepreneurship success. She's a startup coach, and I'm sure, as you'll gather, she knows what she's talking about. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you so much for having me, Moms.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Okay. Would you care to tell the viewer your background in terms of what you do professionally and your training?
Awesome. Well, I'm a startup coach predominantly. I've done a few other things. I'm also a published author, wine enthusiast as well, and I do run a few startup programs as well as a women's festival. It's an annual festival called I Am Tomorrow. It's an international festival. We're actually the first hosted in Africa. So a few exciting things that I'm actually doing, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I have a podcast as well.
Oh, wow. Tell us about the books you've written. What are they about?
Well, my very first book that I've written is actually about wine, because I love wine. So it was actually a beginner's guide to wine, because I had so many friends who got so confused about wine. They'll be like, we don't understand. What is Chardonnay? What is Merlot? What are these things? And I was like, I will explain it to you. So that was my first endeavor. A recent book that I've also been participating in recently is an anthology. I was invited to join two other authors from the USA to add to a book called My Soul Says Yes for Women. It's basically about giving women stories that can help them develop themselves, help them motivate themselves, help them actually say yes, when so often women say no. Yeah.
And tell us about your podcast. What's it called and what motivated it?
Well, my podcast is called the Spark Ideas Podcast because my business is Spark Ideas Podcast because my business is called Spark Ideas Group. So with the Spark Ideas Podcast, what I'm doing is I'm interviewing entrepreneurs, similar to what you're doing here, because there is so much that we can gain from hearing other entrepreneur stories. I think so many times, we hear stories of entrepreneurs and it's like, oh, I'm now successful. Oh, I'm a millionaire. We never hear from people who are still struggling, who can say, look, I had this problem last week, this is how you fix it. So that was the reason why we did that.
Okay. And what platform is it available on?
It's available on anchor.fm, so that's anchor.fm/Spark Ideas Podcast. You can actually also check it out on Facebook as well. We do have a few episodes there.
Okay. All right, we're here to talk about startups, isn't it? You're going to talk specifically about what it takes to be successful as a startup, because you're a startup coach. Would you care to tell us what is that? What is a startup coach?
Okay. Basically what I do is I sit down with entrepreneurs and I help them workshop their businesses on a very individual basis. And I try to figure out, okay, why are they having a particular issue in their business right now? Is it a personal issue? Is it a marketing issue? Is it a financial issue? It's really a very personalized type of industry where, depending on who you're sitting with, the coaching will change from person to person. It's not always just a very straightforward approach. So basically it's asking, what more can we do to actually help you be more successful? What is currently stopping you from being successful? And what more do you want to do? What are your dreams? What are your ambitions? I think one of the things we know as entrepreneurs, you start off with an idea, with an ambition. halfway through it gets tough. You're like, I'm changing direction.
Yeah,
and
looking for a job.
I'm looking for a job, or I'm changing my business, and you're no longer doing what you're actually passionate about. And then you find a lot of entrepreneurs dropping out of the entrepreneurship life because they just don't care anymore. So it's about finding that sweet spot, helping them find that sweet spot.
And what is the professional training involved in getting you to be a startup coach?
Okay, so what I did, my journey to becoming a startup coach was a bit of a ring around the roses. I was doing a degree in entrepreneurship. My parents said I should do a degree in entrepreneurship because I had so many hobbies. So they're like, one of these will turn into a business.
Yes.
So we're giving you 4 years, go to university, and you'll figure out which hobby you're going to turn into a business. And then
is that UB or some other university?
Oh no, I did it through UNISA. I did it long distance. I did 6 years of boarding school. So after high school, I was like, nope, I am not doing this. Going to university, going to classes. I don't want to sit in a classroom anymore. I want to just work by myself. So as I was doing my degree, I discovered at the end of it that I still hadn't decided which hobby I'll turn into a business. But what I found out is that I like talking to people about their ideas. I love sitting down with entrepreneurs and saying, oh, what's your idea? Just sitting down with paper, just writing and brainstorming. And I was like, I should turn that into a business.
And how long have you been doing this?
It's been about 5 years, actually. And then along the way, I also got my MBA. So yeah.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
Now, the first part of the success puzzle is to know yourself. That seems so cliche, seems so basic, but I'm sure there's a lot more to it.
It seems so basic until you actually realize how little people actually know about themselves. From time to time on social media, I see these posts where people say, oh, stop saying that you're a Scorpio or looking at you're a Sagittarius or whatever it is to try and figure out who you are, It's because, innately people have a deep desire to know more about themselves, but then they don't necessarily have the tools to actually know who they are. And when we're talking about knowing yourselves, I mean, when I do my coaching with my clients, I take them through a personality test. I take them through a life purpose exercise. I take them through a creativity assessment, because one of the things that people don't often think about is when you look at yourself as a person, sometimes the way you view yourself is not who you really are. Sometimes it's affected by your environment. So let's say you're a very quiet person who grew up in a very rowdy home. So then you had to adapt and become a little bit more rowdy. So then now you have that mask that has been put on you by your life circumstances. And yet when you go into business and you try to be a more assertive, aggressive person, it doesn't work out because inside that's not actually who you are. So it's very, very important for every single entrepreneur. You need to know who you are as a person, because who you are as a person affects your business and how you run your business. One of the things I always say is the reason why we do the personality test is so that you can know your strengths and your weaknesses, which align with each of the personalities. Once you know your strengths, then you can say, okay, how do I leverage my strengths to help my business? And once you know your weaknesses, you say, what are my weaknesses? Okay, I talk too much. That's a weakness. Okay, how can it derail my business? And then what can I put in place? What boundaries can I put in place to stop that from derailing my business? So it's a very complex process, but that's actually the first key. It's not even looking at a business idea or anything. It's really knowing yourself.
Yeah. Still on knowing yourself, you talked about personalities, and I've read somewhere that there are 4 personality types. How do you actually, what are these personality types, and how do you go about, sorting it out to find out where the person belongs?
Okay.
Yes.
There are 4 temperaments. There are quite a few personality tests, but there are 4 temperaments. I use the 4 temperaments, which either will categorize you as a choleric, sanguine, melancholic, or phlegmatic. So to explain these personalities in terms of, I guess, to say animals, your cholerics would be like, your lions, big, in charge, know what they want, tell everyone what to do. Your sanguines are like your monkeys. It's just like fun, chat, story. Your phlegmatics are your very organized, very meticulous, very detailed type of people. People like, so you say maybe ants or bees. And then your melancholics are people who are very intense emotionally, so they're often very quiet, a bit deep thinking.
Introverted?
Very introverted to a certain extent. And so I would say if we're looking at an emotional esque animal, I'd say maybe a donkey, because whenever you see the donkeys, the ears are always down. So there is a test that I do where I send it basically to you, and then people rate themselves per word on a scale of 1 to 5, and then we add up the totals. Then based on the total, we'll see what your highest score is. But then we don't just stop at your highest score, because your highest score will be in one of the categories, but there is also power in combining the two highest scores, because you'll find that someone, let's say, who is choleric as the highest score and second choleric, sanguine, is different from someone who is sanguine highest score and choleric second highest score. So you do have to also look at those combinations to then see.
So once you know what combination of personalities you are, how do you not weaponize, how do you practicalize it into business?
Okay. What I do is I have a guide that I actually provide, like an analysis, which basically lists as per each temperament the strengths. So we're looking at your strengths at home, at work, as a friend, you know, and you know, just in general, your emotions. And then also the same thing for the weaknesses. So when I'm working with my clients, what I do is I sit down with them and I'm like, okay, we're gonna pick 3 strengths and 3 weaknesses, the ones that you really feel like, okay, these are the things I need to focus on. And then we're going to ask ourselves, okay, in your daily life, running your business, living your life, how has this weakness derailed your business? How have you seen it affecting your business? And then based on that, we then set a target to make sure that, okay, look, we're watching for these 3 things. When I see myself talking too much, I pause and I ask the person I'm talking to, hey, so what do you think of what I said? And give them a moment also to speak. So it's all about really seeing where you are and asking yourself, what can I change about that?
And then I have an idea. That one needs to be unpacked. Have an idea. Do you help the entrepreneur discover the idea they have, or they have to come to you with an idea? If you know what I mean.
I prefer it if the person comes to me with an idea, because that's going to be based on what they're interested in. This is where, again, we come back to knowing yourself, you know, because there's certain things that people just love doing. Like the people who love cooking. So for them, you know, starting a business in the food industry is not an issue because they love doing that. Whereas there are people who do not like cooking, and then, you know, they don't want to be anywhere near that. So what I tend to do is I ask them, okay, tell me, you know, who you are. We do the personality test. We do the life purpose exercise where they actually figure out, you know, a small statement on what they think their life purpose is. That can change, you know, as people grow. As life changes, you also change. And then I would say, okay, what are you good at? What are the things that you love doing? You know, what are the things that you could do and do and do and do? What is the thing that, for instance, if you're drunk, you'll be talking about? Like, you are drunk, you have been in your cups, but you will not stop talking about that thing. That is what we're doing to discover what the passion. And then based on that, we take that idea, and then I always ask them, so what? Okay, you want to start a bakery, so what? Why should I care about your bakery? So it's about actually then taking them through the creative building process to actually develop that idea.
That's the thing, you're developing ideas creatively. That's the next nugget I want you to develop. Developing ideas creatively. Do you create that environment? And for someone who might be watching, what do they do to help them develop the idea creatively, for instance? Okay.
First of all, they need to get rid of the myth or the belief that there are certain people who are creative and there are people who are not creative. There's no such thing. There's 7 different areas of creativity that every single person falls into. I have never met a single person who does not fall into more than one of those areas of creativity. It's just that we have been taught that if you don't draw or, you know, or make things, then you're not creative, or if you don't write, you're not creative. There are various areas of creativity. There's inner creativity. These are people that are very good at understanding themselves. They're very introspective. They tend to be philosophers, psychiatrists. There's relationship creativity. I think we all know these people who are like social butterflies. You just drop them in a room. After 5 minutes, they've got 10 friends, you know. There's event creativity, people that are good at organizing events, you know, and like just managing people, managing all the logistics. That's a form of creativity. Okay, and then we have material creativity. These are people who work with their hands. These are people that make things, like artisans and, you know, carpenters, that sort of thing, you know, anyone that does something like that. And then we also have organizational creativity. I think we all know people whose houses and desks are always spotless and everything is organized. That is a form of creativity. There's also idea creativity. There are people who just, you'll say, okay, I need an idea for something. You'll put, let's say, a pair of spectacles on the table and they'll start coming up with ideas. And then the last one is spontaneous creativity. These are people who are just like, if you were to snap your fingers like this and say, tell me what you're thinking right now, let's do something wild. They'll think of the wildest thing for you to do, And those are the people, I always say, those are the people where in school, if you insulted them, they would respond with an insult like this without thinking twice, because they're spontaneously creative. So what I do is, I make all my clients go through like various creative exercises. I've also been doing a thing with a Creative Business Cup page on Facebook, where for the past few weeks, at the end of 2020, we're doing free brainstorming sessions on Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m. All you need is a piece of paper and a pen. That's all you need. You don't need to be overly, I guess, intellectual. I've run workshops where I've had high school dropouts. I've had university graduates. I've had moms. I've had like people from various backgrounds being able to do the same exercise and still come up with comparatively good ideas.
How do they then choose the right idea to work on?
Okay. So there are 4 things you need to focus on when it comes to ideas. But the one pitfall I can say right now is a lot of the times when people are brainstorming, they'll come up with one idea and they'll be like, oh, it's nonsense, and then they'll scrap it. People should never do that. When it comes to creativity, quantity is more important than quality. You have to come up with as many ideas as possible. Don't stop that flow of ideas, because as soon as you start looking at each one and trying to focus on each one, you're stopping the flow of ideas. So once you've gotten all the ideas, as many ideas as possible, you now sift through them, and then you figure out whether you're going to work on them based on 4 things. 1, time. Do you have the time to actually implement that idea? Do you have the knowledge to implement that idea? Do you have the information, which is not coming from you but from someone else, to implement that idea? And then do you have the resources, whether it's money, whether it is people to assist you? So you look at whether you have those 4 things, and then you choose your idea based on which of those ideas match up with those 4 things.
So in other words, you may have to sacrifice and abandon some ideas that you may feel passionate about because of one of these limitations.
Yeah, or what you can do is you can try and think creatively around one of those limitations.
Okay. Now, this one is very relevant for the entrepreneur. Know your customer. It's also a bit cliche, and it's something that we are constantly talking about. When do you call a customer a client? When do you call them a patron? How do you get to really know them?
I would say it all comes back to the first thing of knowing yourself. If you know yourself, then you should know your customer, because whatever you're building it for someone like you. Now, a lot of the times when people start businesses, they're trying to sell products and have businesses of things that they themselves would not buy. So now when they meet up with somebody else and they're trying to sell this thing, the person's not buying it because you yourself as a person, you're not buying it. That's why I always say it starts with knowing you. Once you know yourself, there's an old adage, knowing me is knowing you. Once you know yourself, then you ask yourself, okay, I've developed this solution, this product, this service. It's ideal because this is how it would serve me. Then that is what you think of when you're going out there to sell to people. Because a lot of times we think of very fancy, elaborate things, which, if we have to be honest, if it was us, we wouldn't purchase it.
So in other words, in order to know your customer, you first have to introspect and know yourself. And I gave you those examples, patron and client. What is the differences? Customer, patron, client.
Okay, I feel that a patron is someone that is with you for the long run. They will never ever go anywhere else. They will stick to you no matter what, and they'll bring people to you. A client is somebody that is satisfied for a certain amount of period with the services that you're offering them. So they'll be like, okay, I'm with you, but you can bet your bottom dollar that if your price changes or anything goes awry, they can be poached from you. And a customer is somebody that just comes and buys on a without any sort of commitment. It's a haphazard. It's oh well, I'm gonna go and buy there. I'm gonna go buy there.
So really, the ideal thing is to develop your people into clients and patrons.
Definitely.
And how do you do that?
Well, Interesting that you should ask me this. There was a blog post I read a while ago, a few years ago, called 1,000 True Fans. And it posited that for any small business or any craft person, any creative, to be really successful, all they needed to do was have 1,000 true fans. I mean, developing a relationship with your brand with 1,000 people, where these people, if you drop whatever you've dropped, they buy it. They tell other people about it. They talk about it. So it's really about taking time to actually invest in those relationships. But it can be very difficult, as a small business, as an entrepreneur, to actually do that, because there's a lot of time pressure. So sometimes, there's always this a bit of a catch-22, do I invest time in actually making my current clients happier, or do I go looking for new ones?
Okay. Working out a business model, you can't go very far if you don't have a business model. You say that entrepreneurs should have a business model worked out. How can you become intentional about that, and how do you assist?
I would say the first thing, simplest thing ever, do a business model canvas. Everything you need is all there on one page. A lot of people often get intimidated by the prospect of doing a business plan, because it's got all the sections, and you're just looking at them thinking, I don't have a education in business, I don't know what this is. But then with the business model canvas, it's so simple. It just deals with a few things like, okay, how are you going to be making your revenue? Who are your suppliers? Who are your key partners? What are your communication channels? How are you going to get to your customers? What are your costs? Those are things that anyone who doesn't have a background in education can just quickly sit down and write and figure out. Because like I said, the reason I like the business model canvas is because, it gets you to focus on answering all the right questions on one sheet of paper.
So a business model canvas is just a piece of paper where you write what?
Well, what it does is a business model canvas basically has all the sections I just spoke about, but they're organized on the one sheet of paper. So they're given each like a box, and then you answer the questions there. So there's a section for asking yourself, okay, I want to start a business that makes artisan cupcakes, okay? Who are my key partners? And maybe your key partners can be people that, let's say, do functions for children, for instance, decor shops perhaps, because then people come looking for decor stuff, and then they can also see those products. Things like, okay, what is the value that you're adding? So it's like, oh, the value that I'm adding is whoever comes and gets my cupcakes will have something that no one else in Botswana has, Okay, what are my costs? So, well, there's a cost of getting the equipment, there's a cost of electricity, of transport. So it lays out those things, and you can just quickly scribble them. You can usually finish a business model canvas in under 2 hours. And based on what you have on the business model canvas, you can decide whether or not you're actually going to go and do a full business plan. So
is this something that's ideal for aspiring entrepreneurs?
Definitely.
Or is it also ideal for accomplished entrepreneurs?
It's ideal for everyone. For aspiring entrepreneurs, it gives them a place to think logistically and just clearly about the idea that they have. Because so many times we're like, oh, I have this idea, I'm sure it'll make me $1 million. We only find out after we put like all the money into that, no, I'm actually losing $1 million. And also for what I find is that with established business people, I know I often like to use the business model canvas because it helps me gain clarity on some of my ideas as well. It helps me actually see if this is worth it, this idea that I have.
Okay. Finding a mentor. This is something that we talk about a lot. I myself have some mentees, but you seem to be saying that everybody needs to have a mentor.
Everyone does. Every single person.
Explain to us why that is important.
Because you're never going to be the smartest person in the room. And if you're the smartest person in the room, you shouldn't be in that room. It's not a room for you to grow, I always like saying that, for you to grow or to achieve anything, you need to be shown how to do that by other people. Why do you want to fail by yourself? Why do you want to fall into the hole by yourself? If somebody can say, look, there's a hole right there. I got into it, don't get into it. I'd prefer to actually learn from someone else. But I tend to find that the issue that we often have, especially in Botswana, is that there are not enough mentors for people who want to be mentored. people also do not understand the mentorship relationship, because you'll find a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I'm mentoring this person. It's like, oh, when was the last time you spoke to that person? Oh, it's been a while. Okay, the last time you spoke to them, what were the goals that you set for your mentee? Oh, we didn't, we just chatted, he was depressed. Okay, but then what was the next thing, that the next outcome, you know? Because I have 2 mentors myself, and I mean, they actually keep me like on my toes. It's like, look, we want this stuff. You said you're gonna do this. Well, you know, have you done it? And because you need that accountability. You need deliverables, and you need accountability. Every entrepreneur needs accountability, because entrepreneurship is a very lonely journey.
Here's a question that sometimes comes up. Is it the job of the mentee to find a mentor, or is it the job of the mentor to find a mentee, or to make themselves available for a mentee? Who has to initiate the process?
I think the person who has the most to gain has to initiate the relationship, and that's the entrepreneur. If you're hungry, you need to go and hunt. You know, I mean, it's always so weird if people are like, oh, I want someone to come and mentor me. You want someone to come and go and look for a mentor. Like, what comes to us? What really comes to us? There are very few things that come to us. While I do think it is important as well for people to want to mentor others, right? At the end of the day, you'll find that the people that actually need the mentorship the most is actually us, the people that want to be mentored, not the person who's mentoring. Because to be honest, if the person doesn't mentor anybody, their life doesn't change. But if we don't get mentored, then we don't grow.
I've often heard that there's nothing for mahala. You can't get something for nothing. So in that connection, what do mentees have to give to their mentors to make it worthwhile for the mentors to accept the mentorship?
Okay, so there is this somewhat model. It depends, because when you say, you know, you don't always get anything for free, there are some people who, you know, will offer something for free, but there is something else that they're getting from it. For instance, a lot of mentors get an ego boost. They just want the ego boost of saying, I am mentoring others, you know? And if that's what it will take for someone to mentor me, then I will go and be mentored by you, and I'll be like telling everyone about my mentor, you know? But everyone has something that they want to get. Even again, it comes back to knowing yourself, you know? Because there are people who are, let's say, hungry for affirmation, people that are hungry to be noticed, people, let's say, who are just, you know, let's say philanthropic, and they just want to give back because somebody gave to them. You know, and other mentors per se would be like, okay, look, I'm going to help you out, I'm going to mentor you, maybe I'll put some money into you, and you know, I want some dividend, I want a return on it. So it really depends on the type of person that you meet up with. But at the end of the day, I think the most important thing is that mentors need to be honest about what they want to get, and they need to understand their motives. Because I've been in a situation where I've had a mentor who was not black, but they liked this idea of, oh, I have this black girl from Africa that I mentor. So it's like the ego was being boosted, but I wasn't getting a lot from the mentorship. Do you get what I mean? So even with the current mentors I actually had to sit down with them and say, okay, but what are you giving me? Because I don't want just this mentorship where you're like, oh, let's catch up, let's talk. No, I mean, like, I want results. I want things that can actually grow my business. So yeah, everyone needs to be honest about what they expect and what they want.
In your business, do you actually help create those mentoring relationships? And if so, how do you go about it?
Sometimes I do. I like to believe that I'm a connector. So a lot of the times, if I meet an entrepreneur who has a particular skill set or a particular need for somebody to assist them or growth in a particular area, then if I know somebody, I'll make sure that I pair them up with that person.
Okay.
And then follow up and see how it's going.
Okay. Now, learn to work with other people. You know, that's one of the other points you want to do. Find others to work with. Are you talking about just creating a network? Is this a skill, and how do you develop it?
I guess it is. It can be a skill. I think sometimes it also comes down to personality as well. There's some people that are very introverted, and they're not good at, let's say, walking up to somebody and saying, hey, I need this, you know. And then there are people who are like, hey, you got that, I got this, let's work together. So that's why it actually needs to be said. Because some people are like, it's obvious, you know, find someone to help you. But for other people, it's not. So it's very, very important that, you know, people need to search around in their environment to see who can support them. I can't tell you the number of times we have seen entrepreneurs doing it alone when there are other people around who could have supported them, but they never asked. And that has a lot to do with our attitudes around help. Is it that you think, oh no one would want to help me, no one would want to partner up with me?
I've heard ridiculous things like people, tomorrow he'll be boasting that he helped me. For that reason, I won't do it.
Let them boast. I'm here to, I'm never going to stop anyone from boasting. I'll even be like, come, I'll even boast. Let's sit together. Let's boast together.
Okay.
You know, I mean, it's so silly. It's like, oh, tomorrow someone will say something.
Yeah.
So I'm going to continue to suffer so that they don't say something. That's pride.
Yeah.
And that's also
foolish pride.
It's foolish pride, and it's something that would be a weakness, I think, in a more choleric nature, because they tend to be very proud as cholerics, you know. So that's something someone will have to work like out for. I had a situation where I'm very bad at accepting gifts, or if somebody's like, oh, here's some cash, I'm always like, you know, but not because I think it's bad or anything, because I give money to people, but now when it comes to me, it's like, why you give me money, you know. And then I had this thing where I was like, you know what, in 2021, I'm going to stop saying no when someone decides that they're going to give me money or help me or bless me in some way. And I remember that one of my mentors actually, you know, put a significant amount of investment in something that I was doing, just like, oh, you don't have this here, you know. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to accept it because it's 2021 and I'm working on this thing. But it's also something that, you know, your personality, who you are as a person, the two things often mix
on
it up.
that point, there's a book by a woman called Shonda Rhimes, I think that's her name. She's a she's a producer. She's well known in America. She's written a book called The Year of Saying Yes.
I've read it.
And it's a wonderful book.
I
it
love that
impacted
book.
me. And it talks about exactly what you're saying. Is it the one that influenced you to start saying yes in 2021?
It certainly did help, especially also writing a book, co-authoring a book that's called My Soul Says Yes. It's like, you know, you just need to be saying yes. Otherwise people will be like, this one, she's writing this book. She's telling us to say yes, but she's always saying no. No.
So you had to be congruent. You had to be consistent. Okay. Learn as much as you can when you can. What are you saying?
I'm saying that people should keep growing. I had a very interesting conversation last year with some of my employees. They were using my iPad and then they went to YouTube. And then they looked at all the videos I was watching. And they're like, this is insane. You know, you're watching videos on lost Roman legions, how to make cheese, you know, so many random things. And I was like, yeah, but then I work in a field in which I have to help people come up with ideas. And ideas are seeded from many various places. So take the time to learn. I always say to people, you know, if you follow TEDx, they do 5-minute videos on just about anything, you know, on astrophysics, on just, you know, the environment, on psychology. Those are just 5-minute videos that you can watch on Facebook, even if you're a social media bundle, and learn, you know. A lot of the times I know in my industry, even when it comes to business, sometimes I don't have the time to do a course for like 20 hours or something, but I'll get like a 15-minute YouTube video, and then while I'm cooking, I'll be listening, you know. So there's so many ways that we can learn that it shouldn't be like, oh no, I haven't had an opportunity to update my skills or my talents or to learn anything new because I can't sit down for, you know, a few hours or read a book or something. Then, you know, just listen to something.
How do you then address the problem that I've had some entrepreneurs talking about, which is information overload leading to paralysis, you know, analysis paralysis, for instance?
Okay. So I'm really bad at that because that's a problem that I have. And I have that problem not just even with information, even when I'm doing certain tasks. If I use a lot of brain power on a particular task, then after about an hour or so, I'm just skittish. I can't focus on anything. And I would say, first of all, know how much you can take. And give yourself bite sizes. A lot of the times when we suffer from analysis paralysis, what has actually happened is that we've given ourselves too much to chew on.
Too much?
Too much to chew on. The second thing that's also happened is that, okay, in the process of developing ideas, there's a process, right? The first step is interest, right? This is where you first get, I want to do this, right? And then the next part is research, you know? And then the next part is incubation. Now the research part is where we now have this idea and we go and we read books and we read books and we do and we do and we watch and we watch. But the thing is that after a certain amount of time, usually people get frustrated, the paralysis analysis.
Yes,
and then they dump it, they leave, they're like, I can't take this anymore, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
What happens is that they should have long stopped because the incubation process was about to start. So what happens is that when we are reading and consuming information, right, a lot of it gets processed in our subconscious. But you need to give your subconscious time to actually put the pieces together.
Yes.
But if you're always still just feeding it and feeding it and feeding it, at some point you get frustrated because it's like, no, like just stop this nonsense now. It's too much. And then after you've left it for some time, that's why, you know, something can trouble you, and then after 2 weeks you get that aha moment.
Yes.
And that is what has happened, because the incubation is done in your subconscious, and then it's occurred, and then it's like, oh, why didn't I think of that? It's because your mind is working on it.
Is there any mechanism for controlling that? When do you then shut the system down to get it to incubate, as it were?
I think you need to give yourself a reasonable amount of time to rest, which all entrepreneurs don't do. Like, if you can give yourself the recommended 8 hours of sleep a day, right? If you can find yourself, first of all, get some sleep, get some rest. 2, if you find yourself getting frustrated or getting annoyed, you know, when you're just getting annoyed, there's just something that's just annoying you.
Small things just
it's just like, you know, or you think that's when you're like, that shows that no, there's something else that is supposed to be happening in your head right now, but you're still trying to dig this. So take time to just go out in small chunks and then go and do something else.
Oh, okay. You already touched on this, the idea of rest. I mean, my view, I used to believe strongly, is that really the only time I rest is when I sleep. But because I say to people, and I want you to deal with this as a success coach, I say to people, my vacation is my vocation. My work is inseparable from my life. So I tend to just be working non-stop. And I'm sure you have a lot to say about that.
Yeah, I do. As somebody who also is very bad at resting, this is what I'll say. You're right. Your work and your life are basically the same thing. Essentially, your business speaks for you as a person. So you tend to find that however a person is, just in general, is how their business is going to be run. But either way, a person needs to rest. Business also needs to rest. But coming back to the issue of incubation again, you need to take a break from those things. It's the same thing with the car. Imagine that you just decided you're going to run your car like 24/7, just constantly, you know, and never ever turn it off, never ever take time to actually let it just, you know, come together, just breathe, not to wear down the parts. Because at the end of the day, we are, I guess I could say, we're in a meat suit. We're meat.
Meat suit.
We're in a meat suit.
That's
okay?
beautiful. That's a nice way of saying it. Yeah.
We're in a meat suit. I actually saw it on this a post online. It was like aliens talking, and one alien describing to another alien. Humans like, oh no, they're made of meat, but how do they think? No, the meat thinks. Meat is thinking. So we're basically a meat suit, and that means that, you know, we can get tired, we can get exhausted, we can be worn out. If you do not rest, your business is going to stop. Because if you burn out, there's no business, because you're the person who's running the business.
I really want to understand this rest thing. Is there a regimen? Do you recommend that people do so many hours, take a rest? Or are you talking about vacations? Because I find that even when I'm on vacation, sometimes I'm working, I'm reading. This is an engagement. I find I go crazy if I totally disengage.
There are things that you have to do on a daily basis. You need to sleep. You just need to sleep. Sleep is not just also for your mind, it's also for your body. Because when you sleep, that is when your immune system, you know, works on itself. It regenerates itself. And again, it also gives your mind time to actually conceptualize some of your great ideas. So if you're not sleeping, saying I'm working on my business, no, you're destroying your business by not sleeping, you know? And also, you know, the work of being an entrepreneur is very difficult. It's a very painful process. It's very strenuous. So you need to get as much rest as possible. So then there's that general rest of, okay, I'm passed out, I'm out cold, you know? And then there's also rest for your mind. Like you said, you know, you're always reading a book. You know, I find reading to be very stressful, especially as a writer, because when I'm reading a book, I'm like, oh my gosh, this writing style is very nice, I should take notes. But it's like, oh, but wait, the idea, you know. So what you need to do is you need to find some mind-numbing exercises, or things that you can do that don't require a lot of intellectual input from you. So one of the things you can do is you can go for walks, you can take a drive, out of the city. Because it's also important, what is very key to rest is environment. If you are in the same environment all the time, you won't be able to rest. And I say this especially for like people who work at home, because I can't get any work done at home. And I also can't really fully rest at home because I've had both of the things together, like molded together. So when I'm trying to work from home, my body's like, oh, but your bed is there. Don't you want to rest? When I'm trying to rest at home, it's like, oh, but your work table is there. Don't you want to work?
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where sometimes you need to actually leave the environment. That's why it's like, go for a vacation, go somewhere else, and then kind of break that pattern, get an opportunity to breathe. So I would say that definitely, one of the things my mentor told me quite recently is like, you need to take a break at least once a month. And we're not talking about weekends. We're talking about outside weekend, like 3 days outside of a weekend to do something else and leave the environment. Because when you're still in your environment, like if you're at home, even if you don't work from home, when you're at home, you'll look at your fridge and you're like, ish, I need to buy groceries. And then, or you'll look at the TV and then you're like, hey, come to that payment plan that I haven't even finished. Hey, and then the stress is slowly building up. So that's why it's important to actually escape. And then if you can't escape, if you can't go on holiday, get into meditation. Or get into watching videos on visualization, for instance. Or even get into ASMR. I love ASMR. It's just
what's that?
It's the weirdest thing ever. It's so weird. Well, everyone thinks it's weird. I love ASMR. So ASMR stands for auto-sensory meridian response. So it's basically how like certain sounds, if you hear certain sounds, they can make you tingle. So it could be crunching paper or soap being scraped, or something like that. So there's literally been a whole industry built around that on YouTube, where people do videos where they're drawing or scraping soap or even just whispering or pretending that they're cutting your hair or something like that. Yeah, you can like find one for like 2 hours. Someone will be like, okay, today I saw one for men which was like, today I'm giving you a shave, So you actually watch the video and you have your earphones in, and they have the earphones that they use actually have ears on them. So when they actually move, it literally sounds as if someone's whispering right in your ear, So it gives you almost that feeling of, oh, I'm not in my regular space right now. And it's been found to help people with sleep, with anxiety, with stress and depression as well.
Can you just clarify why one accesses that? One finds
YouTube.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. We're getting towards the end of our conversation together. Great conversation, by the way. But this is where you can now ask me a question. Maybe something that you'd like me to, clarify for your benefit. Within reason, of course.
Do you trust me, Mom? Are you sure you trust me with this question?
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've kind of been following your business on Facebook. I see quite a few of your ads, especially in terms of this beautiful facility, And I know that you're somebody who's very, very keen on helping entrepreneurs and stuff like that. And I've always wondered, you've got this beautiful space. Why haven't you created a co-working space for entrepreneurs? Because I think that would be something that could benefit you in terms of the work that you want to do with entrepreneurs. And I also see you as a businessman who could actually get support from other corporates to actually help you in developing that co-working space that you give entrepreneurs somewhere to go, where they can actually say, I'm going to work here.
That's brilliant. Actually, I've been working on that thing in different ways, that idea. 3 years ago, we set up Mogobe Office Park, which is by the mall, the old Minchin and Kelly building. We do have co-working spaces, and we have subsidized rentals. For instance, we have virtual offices starting as low as $700. And we encourage young entrepreneurs to have what used to be called in the old days briefcase businessmen, and we do help those who are starting up. And I've also invited, and I repeat the invitation now, entrepreneurs of all stripes to come to Nona's. Nona's is one of our restaurants. We provide free Wi-Fi, and we give you an opportunity to have the best pizza and the best coffee in the world, and in an environment where you can quietly do your business. If you have a laptop, you have your phone, you can charge it there. We have various what do they call them? Points where you can connect. So we do that in a different in a different way. But now we're taking it a step further, and this could actually be breaking news, because what we're then doing, we've seen how the Mogobe office park model has worked for us in the mall. We're actually taking a whole floor. We've identified the second floor of this building, and plans are already in place. And during the month of February, we'll have workmen partitioning and creating workspaces along the lines that you're discussing. So we're thinking about it, but obviously it's something that has to be beneficial. As you can imagine, the mortgages have to be paid, money has to, so it has to be income generating as well. So we're providing subsidized rentals, but in without ourselves suffering too much. So it's something we're working on, and thanks for reinforcing such a brilliant idea. What you're basically telling me is that the idea is workable and is doable, and the market is ready for it.
Definitely.
Yeah. I hope I've answered your question.
You have, certainly.
Yeah. Listen, if you look at that camera, you see it? You'll be looking in the face of a young entrepreneur, an established entrepreneur. Here's a chance to give a short elevator motivational speech to that entrepreneur over there.
All right. Entrepreneur, it's gonna hurt. Entrepreneurship hurts. But if you've got a good idea, you need to believe in your idea, and you have to keep on working on it. Do whatever it takes to make it successful. Find people who also believe in it. Find the resources, scratch around. Every single thing that is in the room that you're in right now was first an idea in someone's mind. And that is why you need to keep pushing your ideas. Whether it's a pen, whether it was a pencil, it started as an idea in someone's mind. And look at it. Right now we're using these things. So keep believing in yourself and keep being creative.
Great. How do people get in touch with you? What are your contacts on social media and elsewhere?
You can contact me via email. That'll be Nicolette@sparkideasgroup.com. On Facebook, you can find me either by looking for my personal page, which is Nicolette on Ideas, or going to the Creative Business Couple Botswana page. If you send a message to either of those pages, I should be able to respond to you. And on LinkedIn, I am Nicolette Chinomona. So that'll be linkedin.com/in/Nicolette C.
Yeah. We normally do a shameless plug of this show. You tell the viewer why you think it's beneficial to watch Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom, and why do you watch it yourself?
Shameless plug. Here's the shameless plug. I think it's good. We need to see entrepreneurs having conversations about what we're actually going through, the things that we're experiencing. That is why it's very, very important for us to have shows like this. You can only benefit from watching other people explaining the journeys that they have been on and what they've learned from. It's as simple as that.
Thank you very much. It's a privilege and an honor for me to thank you once again for taking time out, and I thank my professional assistant, executive assistant, Lebo, for making you available for this show, and thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.